The only way forward was to do a video on the hospital simulation game Theme Hospital, developed by a UK company in 1997, published by EA. So for those of you who don't know, Theme Hospital is a simulated hospital game where you are a hospital manager and you have to design an empty hospital as efficiently as you possibly can in order to save as many patients as you can. And lots of patients come into the hospital with all manner of comedy diseases, which you have to cure them of. If too many people die in your hospital, then your reputation goes down and you lose the game. Yeah, you have to keep your staff happy so that they can perform. You have to keep your machines maintained so that they can perform, and there's loads of other really great bits about it, but I'll talk about them in a minute. So Theme Hospital came out around the same time as all of those kind of micromanagement games like Sims, Age of Empires, Championship Manager, or Champo as my brother used to fondly refer to it. Yeah, it came out around that time, so it was very en vogue. There was just something amazing about having your dinner and then switching on your PC, and then there'd be this empty hospital grid that you had to fill with your GP surgery and your pharmacy. I'm getting the urge to go and play it now. Bullfrog games apparently have a very distinct brand of dark humour to them, which Theme Hospital definitely did. The whole premise was kind of dark because it seemed like the doctors and the managers were somewhat psychopathic and constantly trying to cover up the epidemics that would sweep over the hospital, or the evident rat problem. Yeah, they always had this kind of bad personality, and in the cutscenes you can see this really nasty looking doctor, and then behind him this really sexy nurse who's just had that kind of dark, twisted kind of vibe. The game was initially developed by a guy called Peter Molyneux and a guy called James Leach. They apparently visited loads and loads of real hospitals for inspiration. They must have gone in and checked out the kind of like diagnostic pathways. You know, first you go into the GP surgery to get diagnosed, and then you go into the pharmacy. The nurse will give you the medication, and then you've got like radiators that you can put in the room to keep the staff warm, and then you got the fire extinguishers, and you can put plants in there to give them atmosphere, and then you can put bins in there to keep it clean. But one interesting fact is that Peter Molyneux and James Leach, when they were going around the hospitals seeking inspiration for the game, they were allowed to witness an operation, which I was surprised about. But apparently they were allowed to witness an operation, and they got chucked out. They got chucked out of the operation for distracting the surgeon. What I mean, were they standing behind the operating table just like talking about the game design while this guy was being operated on? Yeah, I thought that was funny. Yeah, the nurse in the pharmacy was kind of my favourite room, I'd say. So our version of pharmacy comes from the late 14th century word pharmacie, where I believe it entered the English language, probably via French. But ultimately derives from Greek pharmakeia, meaning something along the lines of practice of the druggist. Pharmakon, meaning drug, poison, charm, spell, or enchantment, and a pharmakeus or pharmacist, meaning a preparer of drugs, poisoner, or sorcerer. So the next time you're in a pharmacy buying your toenail clippers and your paracetamol, just remember that those guys behind the counter are sorcerers. Theme Hospital was originally supposed to feature real diseases, and it was agreed by the artist on board, a guy called Gary Carr. The death was quite sad, so they kind of decided against that. I'm kind of glad they did, because it would have been really, really depressing if the game had featured real illnesses. My mum's actually a chiropodist, so I've always taken really good care of my feet. So yeah, it was one of the developers, James Leach, who designed all of the diseases, and some of them are comedy. Personally, I think that the most iconic was probably bloaty head syndrome, where guys would enter the hospital with these big inflated heads, and they'd have to go up to a machine to get it deflated. Fun fact, the inspiration for bloaty head syndrome was actually based upon an allergic reaction that Peter Molyneux had, in which his face became an alarming size. King complex was another quite funny one, where all the patients would enter the hospital with Elvis hair and a white Elvis suit on, white flares, big collars, and yeah, king complex. You had to go to the psychiatrist's office to be cured. Fun fact: King complex was actually going to be called Elvis complex. However, Elvis Presley's family owned the rights to his name. Bit weird, but yeah, to the concept of Elvis, I guess. So I suppose the developers just decided that it wasn't worth buying the rights for the game, assuming that the rights were available for sale. I guess the inspo behind King complex would have been the condition God complex, where one believes that their abilities and their position in life is superior to others, and they are therefore more entitled than other people. They believe they are God and they are the be-all and end-all. I think God complex is potentially something that we could all suffer from to various degrees depending on the situation. Everyone would kill another person if it was the end of the world and it was, you know, they die or you die. Welcome to your doom. Because you would be the be-all and end-all. So in some ways, God complex is a very relative condition, as on some level we all believe we're the be-all and end-all, but it needs to be under the right conditions that we would truly demonstrate the ends we would go to in order to fulfill that idea. Slack tongue was another one. I'm not really sure what illness that would be inspired by in real life, but it was really good because all the patients would come in and they just have this really long tongue, and then they'd have to go into a slack tongue machine where they would have their tongue kind of put back to its normal size. And then there was the squits, which everyone remembers because everyone kept running to the toilet. That was quite a funny one too. Now, I always thought that the AI competitors that you play against in the game had really, really weird names. They were called Deep Thought and Holly. Yeah, I was like, that's random. Well, I had no idea where the terms came from. But now I know that actually the AI competitors were named after famous computers. So Holly apparently is the computer in a 90s show called Red Dwarf. And Deep Thought is the computer in the book A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Yeah, that was completely lost on me, but I'm sure not lost on many other people. I'm not a cultural void, I promise. I always thought that the game had an incredible soundtrack, and it was actually produced by a guy called Russell Shaw and a guy called Adrian Moore. Russell Shaw sounds like a kind of interesting guy. He was a music producer in the 90s working for a record label called Street Sounds, providing releases for the white label dance club scene back then. Apparently a fan of ambient techno. I was reading a quote from him actually, which goes something like this: "The audio game designer can bring as much to the early game design as anyone else can." See, I really like that because it sounds like he really believes that it is very much the part of the fabric of the whole game and wants to be there from its inception. But my favorite fact, and this is quite a strange one, the kind of like farting sounds and things like that are used in the loos when presumably patients are suffering from a case of the squits, apparently recorded when one of the sound designers was working in a studio with Prefab Sprout and Seal. So yeah, that was kind of where the where those sound effects came from. I wasn't expecting that one. Rat level was always fun. The hospital was overrun with rats, and you would get kind of transported to a rat level where you have a gun and it's an empty hospital and it's just overrun with rats and there's just rats and you just shoot all of the rats, as many rats as you possibly can. I remember it being slightly pointless, but lots of fun. A group of rats is technically called a mischief. Rats are notoriously blamed for bringing over the bubonic plague to Europe from Asia, but recently this myth has been debunked, and apparently the carriers of the Black Death from Asia into Europe was via gerbils. Imagine all of the rats sitting there in the cellar watching television with popcorn and cigars and champagne saying, "Hey, Get a load of that. We're not the bad guys no more. But, you know, I don't know why they have a Bronx accent, but you understand what I mean. We're not the bad guys no more. That was take 2.